This might just be my favorite Void Cascade build of all time. Thanks to the Oberon touch-up, Smite has been reworked into a very powerful subsume ability, and in this case it'll open up a brand new way to play Nekros. Let me show you with this Thrax Centurion. Normally if you were to take out this Thrax, it would enter a spectral form. You can then finish off the ghost with your operator amp. However, if you try to use Shadows of the Dead, you'll notice that you can't summon it. Nekros didn't kill it after all, your operator did. But watch what happens if we use Smite and Soul Punch. We'll cast Smite twice and then Soul Punch, and now we have a Thrax Shadow. You may have also noticed that there was no ghost this time. This is due to Soul Punch instantly killing the target and turning it into a shadow, something that normally isn't easy to manage. This is what this build is all about. We'll use Smite to weaken enemies so we can use Soul Punch to its fullest. Let's take a full look at Nekros' kit for this build now. Nekros' passive simply restores health for every enemy death within 10 meters. This is not going to be relevant to this build, so we'll end it there. Soul Punch is Nekros' first ability. Casting this ability on an enemy will ragdoll them, dealing some impact damage. The initial damage this ability does is not important. What we really care about is the Soul Harvest mechanic. When an enemy is struck with this ability, they will be marked with an icon for 3 seconds. If the target dies within that time frame, they will become a shadow copy. Alternatively, if the target is at 25% of their maximum HP or less, they will be instantly turned into a shadow copy. Under normal circumstances, Nekros can only have 7 active shadows. If you are at your cap, killing a marked enemy will instead heal all active shadows to full health. Okay, so that's the primary mechanics of the skill, but on its own it has a few major issues. The first issue is that an enemy with Overguard cannot be marked for harvest. If an enemy has Overguard, casting the ability effectively does nothing. If the enemy does not have Overguard, but is not at that 25% health threshold, well, they get ragdolled away, making it a bit tricky to finish them off within that 3-second window. Removing an enemy's Overguard carefully enough to not kill the enemy, but also lower its HP to 25%, is not a reasonable thing to do in Warframe's fast-paced gameplay. But that's where Smite comes in. We'll be subsuming over Nekros' second ability, Terrify, for Smite. The new Smite works like this. Casting the ability on an enemy will instantly remove its Overguard and armor. The target is also dealt a percentage of its current HP as radiation damage. This percentage is capped to 50% of the target's current HP on the subsume version, achieved with 143% ability strength. Additionally, up to 20% of the target's HP is dealt to enemies in an area around the target as radiation damage. The focus is going to be on that 50% of the target's HP. Keep in mind this is the target's current HP, not its maximum. Casting this on an enemy will remove 50% of its HP. Casting again would now remove 25% of its current HP. Luckily, this happens to be 75% of the target's total HP, leaving it at exactly 25%. Casting Soul Punch at this point would then instantly kill the target, creating our shadow copy. For most enemies, this becomes a 2-2-1 combo to delete them. However, keep in mind that the damage is dealt as radiation damage. Orokin enemies take 0.5 times damage against radiation. Instead of 50% of the target's total HP, you will only remove about 25% on the first cast. This also works the opposite way for enemies like the Murmur, who take 50% more radiation damage. A Murmur enemy will lose 75% of its HP in a single cast, allowing you to finish it with Soul Punch immediately. One final thing, you can also boost this damage with Viral against health or Magnetic against shields. If you don't necessarily need to use Soul Punch, priming with these elements will allow you to one-shot just about any non-attenuated enemy. The last part of this ability is its augment, Smite Infusion. This simply allows you the whole cast to grant you and nearby allies radiation damage. This is primarily if you want to give your shadows a large damage buff. It isn't too useful for your own weapon since radiation is not the most desirable element. Okay, that was quite a bit, but don't worry, it's less complicated from here on out. Desecrate is going to be used for our energy economy. Enemies that die within range of Nekros will have their corpses consumed. There is a 90% chance that Desecrate will succeed at consuming the corpse, and then a 60% chance to drop a health orb. If both of these checks succeed, then the corpse will have its loot table re-rolled. This is where that 54% extra loot chance is derived from. Extra loot is nice, but we only really care about the health orbs. Paired with Equilibrium, this will solve any energy issues, as every energy orb will give us energy back. Add Synth Deconstruct on a companion for increased health orb drops and we are set. Finally, we have Shadows of the Dead. Casting Shadows of the Dead will summon up to 7 shadow copies of enemies we have recently killed. Only the last 20 enemies are recorded for the pool of mobs valid to summon, but it does prioritize elite units like Eximus or Heavy Gunners. The cast animation is rather slow for this ability, but while at max shadows it is replaced with a much faster animation. Casting will also pull any active shadows to your location. You can create shadows using Soul Punch without using Shadows of the Dead. However, if you subsume over it, you would no longer be able to scale your shadows beyond their base stats, as those are tied to Shadows of the Dead. We will be using the augment for this ability, Shield of Shadows. Each shadow within range of you will grant damage redirection, scaling up to a maximum of 90%. For level cap, this amount of damage redirection is not relevant. However, damage redirection will also cause any status effects inflicted on you to be instead transferred to your shadows. Anytime you have a shadow active, you are effectively status immune. That's the abilities out of the way. So now let's look at the build starting with Archon Shards. I am using 1 tau parkour velocity, 1 tau cast speed, 2 tau power strength, and 1 tau ability duration shard. These are completely optional. The only thing I want you to be aware of is that these 2 strength shards allow me to reach the 143% strength threshold to max out Smite's health percent damage at the start of a mission. This is simply a quality of life option for me, but due to more augmented, we will be consistently above the threshold after about 165 kills. In the aura slot, I'm using Summoner's Wrath. This is a multiplicative damage buff for our shadows. If you don't want to maximize your shadow's damage, you can pretty much use whatever you want. Breather Spike, Growing Power, it's all fine. Defenses will be a bit light on this build. I'm running Catalyzing Shields, Rolling Guard, and Shield of Shadows. Catalyzing Shields will give us a 1.3 second shield gate through the use of the Augur mod set. Casting Smite, Soul Punch, or Shadows of the Dead will give us shields based on the energy cost. As long as we get at least a single shield point back, we'll be able to reset the shield gate. Rolling Guard gives us iframes and status cleanse on roll. This is used to get out of bad situations, nothing more. Shield of Shadows, like I mentioned earlier, is just for status immunity. Don't forget, however, that the shadows will provide a ton of crowd control, reducing the amount of damage you'll realistically be taking. Our energy economy mods are Prime Flow and Equilibrium. Flow gives a large enough energy pool to play around the mini cast of Smite and Soul Punch we'll be using, as well as recasting Shadows of the Dead to pull our shadows back in range of us when necessary. Equilibrium paired with Desecrate gives us energy sustain to maintain the energy pool. Duration is not that important on this build, but it does slow the HP drain of our shadows. If the shadows HP drain too quickly, you may find yourself having to resummon them more often. That being said, the only mod used here is Prime Continuity. Precision Intensify is used to dump a ton of ability strength into our shadows, increasing their HP, shields, and damage. If you aren't using Strength Shards, you can use Intensify, Umbra Intensify, or Transient Fortitude instead if you want to immediately have the necessary strength for Smite to bring enemies into Soul Punch range with 2 ability casts. The last mod in this build is Smite Infusion. If you don't care for your shadow's damage, you can use this as a flex slot. However, in this case, it is a massive damage multiplier for your shadows. Finally, in the Exo slot, I have Power Drift. Since we have status immunity via Shield of Shadows, there is no need for Prime Sure-Footed. So instead I'm using Power Drift paired with the 2 ability strength shards to put my strength over that 143% threshold at the mission start. Our arcanes are pretty set in stone with Arcane Kamisato and more augmented. These are both massive for granting ability strength, but Kamisato provides a rather unique benefit of increased movement speed for our shadows. This tends to cause them to be more aggressive and spread out to deal with enemies, providing us tons of crowd control. Okay, so that's the build. The rest of your loadout doesn't really matter. Just bring decent weapons to cover any situation you may need to deal with. What I will end on is actually your companion, but use isn't important. However, I'd recommend that you don't bring a companion or companion weapons that will inflict viral. Because we need to do specific amounts of damage to make use of Soul Punch, having inconsistent viral application will make this very difficult. For most enemies, a single viral proc is all it will take to make your Smite one-shot. You could cast Soul Punch and then Smite to kill a now-marked target affected by viral, but don't forget that Overguard will prevent this. This is why the Smite Soul Punch combo works so well for Thrax, because you remove that Overguard with Smite in a controlled way. Besides that, the only thing you need to worry about bringing is an Augur mod if you are not using Breather Spike. Technically, you could do a full Void Cascade without ever having to kill a Thrax with your amp, but bring Maturite anyway. Your teammates probably don't care about letting you delete every Thrax one by one. That's all I have for you guys in this one. If you try this build out, let me know what you think. I instantly fell in love with it, but I want to know what you think and how it performs for you. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and as always, thanks for watching.